We did it, Sam. We finally did it.
We did it.
Victory is ours.
We beat the machines.
Third time is a charm.
Absolutely.
I have. Oops! I got to make a change here. I got to send a text here. Sorry, but I have a conflict. This is why people log in. They want to watch me answer text messages. I found out our problem, why we couldn't log on. I use a service called StreamYard, which connects to YouTube. And inside of YouTube's a little blue button that says Enable Auto Start, and it was toggled off. So every time I go to StreamYard, it would go to communicate with YouTube, and it says, Houston, we have a problem. And it kept retrying it. And out of that frustration on Friday morning, finally, I got a hold of a support person via chat. And I said, can you look in and see what the problem is here? And so he looked at my YouTube account. He goes, yep, found it.
Did they ask you to try to turn your computer on and off again?
Yeah, I did that.
Oh, that's the worst when you call them. Is your computer plugged in? No. Oh, oops.
I went to unlock a house last week with, the phone, the Bluetooth, a condo.
That's amazing, those things.
And when you hit the box, the bottom of the Bluetooth, the key box, it turns the Bluetooth on, and this thing beeps. And when it starts beeping fast, it means it's about to open the box. And it just kept going beep, 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 beep. And it wasn't working. And I tried it and retried it and tried it. And I finally just turned my phone off, turned it back on. Everything worked great.
That's why you always bring a hammer with you.
Such an idiot. Well,
live by the tech, die by the tech. That's what
last week was a wild week, huh?
Yes, it was. And I think it's going to be an even more wild week, this one. I get in the shower and I come out and the market's moved 1%. And that's a lot of movement in 15 minutes, 10 minutes, however long I was in. And I think we're going to see a lot of volatility. Look, as you get more inflation, or as you get more inflation and you get more inflation fears, whatever it may be, whether it's, real or whatever, there's going to be a lot of volatility. So I would expect a lot of volatility here coming up in the markets. Plus September, that's the month. So I think people are going to sit around and wait, but unemployment benefits run out in September and kids go back to school. And that's going to be the big test.
Well, in between now and September, the rent moratorium it expires at the end of this month, except for California. California extended it till the end of September. And speaking of California, did you see where Disney announced that they are moving 2,000 employees to Florida?
You know what? I can't blame them. And one of the articles I have here, if you get a chance to read it on the Wall Street Journal, Biden has proposed raising the capital gains tax rate from 20% to, I think, 42.6%. Many kids go back to school in August. That is true too. Okay. Man, I haven't been in school in so long. I forget.
Yeah. So he's going to raise the capital gains tax?
Well, that's what he's talking about. And you have to remember, corporations are taxed twice, right? They're taxed on their earnings, and then when they pay it out to their shareholders, it's taxed again. So if you're in the highest income tax bracket, that's a 75%. You're paying 63% tax in New York, New Jersey, California, and some of these places if you're in the highest income tax bracket. Forget that. You have to work till what? September, June, July, September, whenever, to pay off just the taxes for the year. You earned 34 cents on the dollar. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. And that would screw everything up. That would put that's probably my biggest fear right now.
Yeah, I'm very concerned about our level of spending. It's out of control. In housing here, we're definitely seeing a slowdown. This is our 7-day moving average. This is my little rudimentary chart. You've probably seen it before, but the blue line represents listings that come on over the course of the week, and the yellow line represents the number of homes going under contract. And it was pretty much 4,000 on, 4,000 off consistently all this time until you see these two holidays, Memorial Day and 4th of July, right? So I put a red line here of where the homes under contract are, and it's falling below where it's been the rest of the year. This is Thanksgiving, this is Christmas. And but listings are going up. Now they're really slow moves. They're like 300 to 400 units. So there is a real slowdown. We call it a slowdown in the housing market, but you can barely feel it. You can see it in the numbers, but there's something going on out there that I think says, I'm so tired of trying to buy a house, and I don't know where this, the economy is going, where inflation's going, where taxes are going. And I think in housing, sometimes when there's that much uncertainty, people go, I'm out, I'm just going to wait. And it's happening nationally. Some areas have seen a real uptick in listings. We are at 6,700 homes today, which is the highest Monday we've had in a long, long time.
Usually it's in the 4,000s, right?
Yeah, it's been running about 49, and now we're sitting at 6,700. That number will drop today as the weekend contracts start to flow in. But so, what is your view on inflation? I mean, I know that Chairman Powell thinks it's temporary, and I think part of it is, or most of it is. But I'm no economist. What are you seeing?
First of all, when we were going to originally talk on Thursday, and that was when Jerome Powell was speaking to Congress, master of ambiguity. That politicians and the Federal Reserve, basically, just one of the Fed's main goals is flexibility. So they're not going to pigeonhole themselves into a corner. Jerome Powell is clearly uncomfortable with where inflation's at. Consumers are clearly pissed off about inflation. And one of the things that was shocking was you saw the consumer confidence index. It was supposed to land at around 86. And prior to COVID, it was at 100. Highest it's been in, 2 decades or whatever. And now it's at 86, or it was at 86. Then it fell to 80. And 6 months out, it's now expected to fall to 75. And so consumers are losing confidence, and they're losing it fast. And that's worrying to me.
Well, usually, isn't there a direct correlation between consumer confidence and the stock market? Because that's usually a leading indicator that stocks could come down. But there's no other place to put your money, right?
That's the other thing. Where are you going to put it? Bond market, money market? No. You don't. You can't put it. One of the things that's going to be important is the bottlenecks. As you know, there's bottlenecks in pretty much everything that whether it be lumber's up 400%, the land prices are, everything's up. We got to see the bottlenecks stop, and you have a mortgage shortage too. You have 5.5 million homes that you need to build in order to keep up with current demand. I mean, we're so far behind the curve.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think you're getting buyer fatigue.
I'm getting appraisal fatigue. I had an appraiser call me last Sunday, and he said, and it's Sunday, right? And he goes, "Hey," he says, "can I appraise that house in a couple hours?" And we were waiting for it. We hadn't heard from him, right? So I said, "Sure, let me get that lined up for you." And so he goes and appraises it, and we haven't seen the appraisal. It was due on Thursday, so we had to extend closing. We're still waiting. So I looked up his number again, and because lenders are not allowed to contact appraisers, they're just zero.
I learned that when I got
called me, so I sent him a text message. I go, "Is this the appraiser for the home in Maricopa?" And he sends back, "Not at the office. It's Sunday." I said, "Sorry. Well, you were working last Sunday." So he sends me his emailing me, "Anything you need, I'll get back to you tomorrow. Thanks." So I emailed him, "Wait, where's the appraisal?" And
on the amount of time we waste waiting for people to do their jobs in life, just horrible. What a pain in the butt too. I wonder, do you think that's an individual thing, or is that a macro
I think that's
problem
an
with
individual
appraisals.
thing. My brother had his house appraised up in Port Angeles, Washington. The appraiser was 84 years old. Took him 3 hours to appraise the house, and then they never saw him again, and nobody ever got the report. They thought he died. Then they found out, no, he was still doing appraisals, but he never turns them in. So you don't get paid till you turn them in. So he's just walking around with his clipboard and his tape measure. And
big old open house for him on whatever he wants to do.
I think, when I look at housing, when I look at the economy, I don't see any numbers in the housing market outside of, people just feeling like they're getting priced out. But there are jitters in the banking system that are worth, that are getting my attention, and maybe they shouldn't. And I spoke to you about a little bit last week, which is the reverse repo, which I don't really understand, except that when I look at the chart, the reverse repo, overnight trading was down here. Now all of a sudden it's up in $1 trillion. I mean, what's your take on that?
Okay, so what happened was, and the reverse repos and repurchase, that's one of the tools that the Federal Reserve uses to control overnight lending. So it like you said, it's a complicated, very complicated system. But the reason that you saw a huge spike was that the Fed lowered the reserve requirements for banks because they did the stress tests. And so right around that time where the spike is when the Fed said, wow, you guys really overcapitalized, and they lowered the reserve requirements. Well, what does that do? It means there's tons of cash at the banks. It means all this money was freed up. All this money that had been sitting on the sidelines that had been previously, it was mandated that it sits there. Now it's just available. So it did that with every bank in the United States. That's part of the Federal Reserve system. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, but all of a sudden now you have this huge amount. The Fed's just trying to pull in that excess liquidity because the banks can't do anything with it. The banks can't earn anything on it. So they're better off giving it to the Fed, letting them loan it to mortgage-backed securities and so on. So it gets, it's a lot of financial, what's the word? There's a lot of manipulation going on. It's not nefarious, but it's very unclear sometimes what they're doing. I don't even think the Fed knows what they're doing. I mean, there's just so much liquidity out there. It's unbelievable.
This is our first pandemic. And so it's, even looking at real estate numbers, comparing them to 2020 was a train wreck. It doesn't do any good to look and say, this July versus last July. The only numbers that count that we look at now are where are we this month versus last month, because going back to 2020 it doesn't, you always have to have a little asterisk by it. However, March real estate was dead. However,
everything blew up.
Yeah. It just, and it boom, 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 boom. And so you can't just look at 1 year. You can look at extremes. And when we look at our inventory numbers and see how low they are, I still have to, say, their inventory is coming up, right? Inventory is coming up. Well, yeah, but not enough. I mean, we're right here. And so we aren't even at 2005 levels. So here's what might have been considered normal these other 3 years prior to that, but we're not anywhere near there. So as long as that number stays that low, we're going to have, increasing prices. But there was a survey that came out.
Now these are homes active listings is what that was.
Active listings. So this Freddie Mac came out, and they're only predicting let's see, what were they saying? I think 5% growth next year in total. So that's a major dip. I don't know how they arrive at that number unless they nationally are just seeing that they think that inventory is going to go way up, and it could. It's on the path that it is right now. It could end up being, way up in the 10,000, 15,000 range by December. But I just don't know what to think of a lot of these outside forces. And I watched the Powell thing as much as I could too. And it was just, you got to be a real, you got to have a lot of patience because he's trying to answer things, and these senators are asking him questions that have nothing to do with the scope of his work. They just have a microphone and a camera on him, and they want to look good. And then Elizabeth Warren, she doesn't ask you a question. She yells at you, and she starts talking to him about this one program. And he tries to say, well, that program's no longer in place. We've replaced it with, she goes, I don't care. I go, what did they
it's a giant, she's the worst. Could you imagine her as president? I mean, it would just be complaint after, all she does is complain.
Well, that's what wouldn't let him answer anything. And that's supposed to be his testimony in front of the Senate. And he didn't get to testify as to much. But then the other thing that caught me too was while he was trying to explain, well, we're looking at these numbers and we're really following this closely. And then the senators would start talking about things like equality and stuff and spending and consumer spending. He looked at him and said, that's your job, not mine.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't even know what he does.
One of the things the Fed is really big on and is their independence. And I think a lot of these senators are realizing, hey, with the Fed's help, we can get a lot of things done. We can, we have a lot of power. Basically, you have the largest bank in the world at your beck and call. So, of course, Democrats, Republicans don't want that to happen. Of course, when they're in power, they're going to want it. But when the Democrats, they're just going crazy with spending. One of the things to watch are wages. Now, we have 7 million unfilled jobs.
Yeah.
And we have all these. We don't know why people aren't going back to work. I think a lot of that has to do with people just saying, you know what, I don't want a job, I want a career. And I
think Powell addressed a little of that too, saying that the complaint was that people didn't want to go back to work because they were getting benefits from staying at home. But he looked at the data he said, we're not seeing a difference in the data between the states that have gotten rid of that extra unemployment and the states that still have it. He said, surprisingly. So he's kind of saying that's not the problem.
Now, part of that may change as time goes on. One of the things you're seeing, though, and again, that's not helping inflation, is because you have all these unfilled jobs. I mean, you're getting McDonald's and Wendy's and all these fast food places, for instance, are paying people just to come in for the interview.
Oh.
And you get $500 signing bonus. You get like, your first 2 weeks, you get like a 2-week bonus or something like that just for signing up, basically. So employers are desperate. But again, those are entry-level things. And that's it. There's a huge shift, I think, in the way people really want to work. We're seeing it with a lot of the retirees. A lot of people retired early. Mid 50s, early 60s. They were planning on retiring in 3 or 4 years. Not anymore. No, they just said, you know what, forget it. The break kind of gave them a chance to think, and they said, we'll just make it work. I don't want to go back to work. Yeah. So you have all these unfilled positions that are not going to get filled anytime soon, and that's going to raise wages because they're going to need to make it competitive.
So now as wages raise like they did in the 70s, maybe that helps out the housing affordability to a certain extent. I remember the inflation in the 70s. I was working in a grocery store, and President Nixon came in and froze wages. Remember, you don't remember that because
I don't.
Weren't even a twinkle in anybody's eye then. But my brother worked at a Pay and Save store, and I worked at a Thriftway store, and you couldn't get a raise. Everybody was getting a raise like every 3 months. And Nixon said, all right, that's the problem with inflation. We've got to get rid of raises, And so he clamped it down. Well, the market's going to figure out a workaround, right? So you can get a raise if you get a position change. And he capped that you couldn't raise the price of meat like hamburger and steak. So that's when Safeway came out with Safeway Select premium meats. It's the same cut of steak. They just change the label, then they can raise the price. Well, in our store, a little
sawdust to it.
Yeah, in our store, I'll never forget one day, and I was like 18, and all of the like mid-level managers walking around, they've all got name tags on. They suddenly all became vice presidents. And I never understood what that meant and why they were bragging about their new name tags. I go, why do we have 4 vice presidents now? Well, when you're a vice president, you got a promotion, so you can now get a raise. So they circumvented Nixon's, order to not get a raise. And so those are some of the silly things that come out of government when they think that that's the problem, and it's a symptom, not the cause.
They always think, oh, we got them now. We got the private sector now. It's like when they tried the estate tax, and then all of a sudden all the rich people just went, well, okay, I'm just going to give it to people on my deathbed. And they went, oh, God, they got us again. Now we have to wait another generation.
The luxury boat tax, remember that?
Luxury, I do. One of the things too, I don't worry about the double-digit inflation happening. A lot of what happened with Nixon was supply constraints. Now we're in a more globalized world. And we had also just gone off the gold standard because we realized, okay, we need a really flexible banking system because the gold standard is just not cutting it. It's just, we need to be able to create credit. We need to be able to, we just need more flexibility. And when your money is tied to a shiny rock, it gets pretty hard to be flexible. So I don't think so. People who are worried about, oh, we're going to see the double-digit inflation, I wouldn't worry about that. But I think you will start seeing some new name tags. I think, with Biden, I think you're dead right about that.
It's they don't seem to equate the amount of spending that they're doing and the amount of money they're flooding into the system to inflation. Too much money chasing too few goods. They just come in and try to tweak things. An interesting thing I bumped in this morning. Guess where the number one destination is for? It's not the destination. They're calling it CNBC. This is going to surprise you. These are Americans test 10 best states for remote work. Where would you think state number one would be?
Oh, I remember seeing this. It was like, what the hell? Where did that come from? What is it? Idaho? North Dakota.
Yeah. Nancy, are you watching? Your state is. Yeah, North Dakota.
What is he saying? Taxes are low. The air is clean. The broadband is, the broadband. All right.
It offers a pristine environment. The housing market has suffered from lack of inventory, but you'll still be able to get a lot of home and home office for your money. And the effective tax rate is 8.9. But this was kind of a weird article too, as I read it, because they had a lot of social issues in here, like Washington State. And it's CNBC. So this comment, you'll be hard pressed to find a more inclusive state than Washington, and which provides robust anti-discrimination laws and this year's expanded voting right. What has that got to do with remote work?
Oh, good. That's where I'm going.
and anti-discrimination laws. If you're working from home, who's going to bother you? Your wife?
I was talking about this on the show. Is you have a whole new level of central banks who are staffed by people who have never seen anything like the 1970s. They haven't seen inflation in their lifetime. They have seen COVID. They have seen the lost decade in the stock market. They saw the mortgage crash. They saw the NASDAQ crash. I mean, they've seen everything collapse. And they haven't seen inflation. During all that time, they've seen periods of robust economic growth. And so you have people who I think are going to start using monetary policy to address social issues. One of the reasons the Fed is letting the economy run hot is because they want to make sure that it, as Powell says, reaches all the corners of the economy. That is, we get everybody it's a more inclusive economy. And that's going to be strange to see because it's historically, it's always been that the economists have said, hey, we just need to manage inflation. Well, now they've added another mandate. what's it called? De facto mandate, which is now we have to make things more inclusive. We have to make sure that it's income is distributed more equally. Wealth is distributed better.
I don't see how the Fed's going to do that.
No, and it's going to be strange. But you know what they're going to try? They're going to let inflation run hot in hopes that it does create that more inclusive economy. Now, how that works, I don't know. But
why do we have such a disconnect right now with the prospect of inflation and interest rates? Because usually, you know, the inflation starts getting up and rates start climbing. Everybody was talking about 4% mortgages, and here we are now sitting at 2.97. They went down, and they didn't even move when Chairman Powell was talking. They just kind of stayed right there.
What was your question? I'm sorry, I cut out.
Why? They're usually when inflation starts running hot, rates start to follow and start to increase, and they're doing the opposite.
You know, it's one of the great mysteries. Number one, I don't think the bond market buys the whole inflation thing, because technically, you know, the bond buyers are what drive bond yields and so on. And they're historically the most conservative group of people, but you don't see them going. You see right now, you see a bond rally, which means people are buying our bonds. And that's what's driving the rates lower. It's different from because the Fed keeps changing the definition. I was just about to get to that. They use one of the things that's such BS about the Fed is the way they measure inflation. They exclude energy. They exclude volatile things that we have to pay for as if they don't count.
Yeah. The price of fuel is just crazy.
Well, and then they exclude it from the CPI, which they use to shape policy. Well, those things matter to us. We have to pay them. How are you going to? It's nonsense. You know, they don't count healthcare in it. How the hell do you not count healthcare? What do I get sick? I die? Is it? And so I think one of the things they're going to start doing is changing the way inflation is defined, and they need to include those volatile prices. And if it screws the data up, so be it. So be it. That's the real data. You don't like it? Tough. That's what happens.
There's chatter going on about getting rid of the credit agencies and FICO scores, and the government's only going to look at one score, and they're going to have it as a government agency instead of private. And I'm seeing writings about that.
Oh boy,
I don't know enough about it to weigh in, but that seems kind of odd to me. And
I don't see why they. You know, one of the things that I think has kept interest rates low are those credit bureaus. Is they create a safer lending environment. Well, when things are safer, you don't have to charge as high as a yield. There's less risk. So to consolidate it into one creates more credit risk.
Especially if the government has their finger on it, they can all of a sudden push a button and give everybody a better credit rating.
Exactly. And that's and the whole credit system's kind of screwed up as is. But one of the things too, again, that's hard to figure out is why are you're seeing people are worried about housing and the housing bubble. I don't think it's a housing bubble, even though prices have risen. Again, because it comes back to the people who are buying. Their credit scores are just phenomenal. You know, in 2008, it was 660, I think, was the average credit score of the person buying the home. Now it's 750 or something. So, it's a great score. Plus, you have a lot more.
The other statistic, too, that says it's not a bubble is a survey out said that 67% of people think it's a bad time to buy. Well, if we were in a bubble, that number would be 75% say it's a great time to buy, fear of missing out. So it's all inverse. It's different. So you can't have, a bubble, no matter whether it's tulips in the 1600s or real estate now, is, people just, chase, they got to have it. They're going to keep going. I'll never forget, broadband was just coming out with, instead of dial up, and on the computer, and a friend came over and he's day trading. Now, this is a smart guy. He's since built the company and made $1 million. But he was showing me, you're not trading stocks? And that's all everybody talked about was day trading stocks. And he sits down to my computer and I had dial up and he goes, never mind, you can't do it. Because it wouldn't go. But everybody was, and that's before the .com crash. And so my point is, when there's a bubble, everybody's talking about it at the water cooler. Did you get your house? You get it today, you can sell it tomorrow, and you can make $10,000. They're not having those conversations. The conversations are, I am so sick of this market.
And that's kind of why I think the stock market, people are going, well, it's inflated and all that. And there's some truth to that. But now that you're seeing consumer confidence come down, and you're constantly seeing all these people go on TV and go, we're in a bubble, we're in a bubble, we're in a bubble. Well, part of a bubble is nobody calls a bubble. And like you said, nobody's at the water cooler talking about it. The kids are. They're blowing up hedge funds for fun, which I think is the greatest thing in the entire world. So all you Reddit traders out there, I salute you. Because, if, you go there, you earn people because people are buying for a different reason. What reason are they buying for this time? That's what I would ask.
What was it? They call it meme trading.
Meme stocks.
Yeah.
Basically, you just buy. Actually, it's a really good strategy. What they're doing is they're taking stocks that are sold short, and it's without getting into it because it gets real technical. But basically, these hedge funds are forced to buy back stock, and it creates this feedback loop. Things go up, everybody goes, oh, look, it's going up. And they buy it. Then the short sellers get burned, and it just keeps going up and up. That's why you see GameStop go from like $20 a share to 500 in the matter of 2 weeks. It just creates a vicious feedback loop that kills. And that's why never in 2005, 2006, to make a quick profit. Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely agree with it. One of the things I worry about, though, is with inflation, if you put down $50,000 on a home and they're buying because of exactly. And when the tide goes out, they say, who's swimming naked? And that's that old Warren Buffett quote. One of the things that worries me about inflation, though, and home buying is that basis is not indexed for inflation. So if you pay $50,000 on a home and inflation's 10%, well, technically you lose a little bit of principal there. You're paying gains when you do sell it. You're going to pay gains on the inflated amount, so on the phantom amount. One of the things I think they should do is they should, at least for the next 10 years, while supply catches up, is they should create a basis that is tied to inflation, so that a lot of one of the things I worry about is people paying too much for the homes right now. And if all of a sudden there is a new influx of homes, well, you don't want to see the price crash, and I don't think that's going to happen. But we've seen what happens when people go underwater under their mortgages. It's not pretty.
Yeah.
The SEC should enforce and investigate, but exactly. As long as you promise flying cars, you're good. You can get away with anything. It doesn't.
People that bought back and overpaid before the crash of 2008, the only people that got hurt in that were people that had adjustable rate mortgages or had to move. If you stayed put and you had a fixed mortgage, you refinanced several times over this couple decades here, and you would be sitting very pretty right now. You just didn't have to go anywhere. That's 2008. It's 13 years, and If you had a fixed rate, who cares? I mean, your house is now worth $250 and you probably paid $350 for it. Well, just don't look at the bank statement. You're buying the payment. You're not buying the house. And the problem was then people bought these homes and they had a 1% mortgage that was going to reset in 1 year or 2 years. And the prevailing rate was 7%. So they weren't looking at what the payment would be at 7%. They were just being told by people, oh, well, by the time that happens, you can, refinance or you can sell and make, $80,000. I'll never forget. I had a family member where the agent told her, congratulations, you're already up $50,000 today. The day you bought the house, yay, goody. But her note was 1%, or it actually was an interest only loan. So making payments for a year, principal was not going down, and then it reset.
So you have no equity.
You had no equity. The value of the house went down. Now all of a sudden you get a note from the bank that says your payment's going to go up to $2,200 a month. And like, why? Well, because you didn't read the small print. And so they overreacted now by saying that you have to have 3 days to review your closing docs when they come, because it takes you 3 days to read and absorb things. And that's a pain in the butt.
As if that's going to make a difference either. It's like people reading the terms and conditions of the Apple agreement, every time you update your iPhone. I mean, you should read it, but half the people using stated income didn't even expect to hold 6 months on how. Yeah.
They were. How much do you make? 100,000. Perfect. And so they weren't planning on hanging out in the house. They were just going to turn it.
Yeah. I know my little brother was doing some of that. He made some good money, but the three great killers of men, Rick: ladies, liquor, and leverage. And so, and a little Charlie Munger quote, but you don't. That's the problem, is you don't want to see people get over levered, and that I do worry about. I worry about it in China. Now, if China's economy falters, then we can see more inflationary pressures. You're going to see more supply bottlenecks. So what's that? So if China's economy gets screwed up, basically our economy gets screwed up too. That's one of the things, to Biden's credit, he's done right, is he's really been hard on China and he's kept that up. But that's I think one of the things that investors are not counting is the United States isn't the only country in the world that matters when it comes to economics. And if other countries falter, and especially important countries where supply chains are really important, that could really, I think, throw a monkey wrench in the recovery. And I do worry about that.
Well, I was speaking to a gentleman last week, and he's in, they build these huge warehouses all over. I mean, big ones. And I said, how's business? He goes, it's unbelievably good. He said, but here's the problem. He goes, I'll order a steel, what did he say, cross beam or something like that. And like now, and I'd be told I'm going to get it in August. Now they're telling me November. And he goes, and then getting the people to put things in place, we just can't get them. And he said, and it's like that everywhere. And I read that the Port of Los Angeles had its biggest month ever in incoming ships. But their outgoing ships are mostly empty cargo ships because they have a cargo ship shortage in Southeast Asia.
Now, you remember that big old ship that hits the canal and clogs up global trade? Yep. So one ship gets hit by a gust of wind, and bam, $40 billion of GDP growth wiped off the map because of a 30-mile-an-hour gust of wind. That caused supply chain backups all over the place. And you had COVID, in California, where they're real strict on COVID. You're going to spend an hour of your 8-hour shift wiping down things if you're at a supply port. So that created supply chain bottlenecks. So you had all these ships at port just waiting, just sitting there waiting. So there's a big line. And so that's another thing too. I mean, if we could just unload the damn things, that might help a little bit.
That's like the book I used to read my kids, and they were the bug that went ka-choo.
Yeah,
The bug
exactly.
sneeze, it caused this, caused this, caused this. That's what that ship in Suez Canal reminded me of.
And that's the thing. It's that's a perfect way of putting it. I like that. I'm going to use that. That's better than the bullwhip effect. I like that. Yeah, it's just a big old
Let's
chain
order that
reaction.
book on Amazon. The bug that went ka-choo. So,
But with the warehouses, I don't know if you've been in Paradise Valley recently. They just tore down PV Mall.
yeah.
And it got me thinking, a lot of these malls would probably be really smart to sell to residential real estate companies.
Mm-hmm.
You have these massive acreage. And how many houses could you build on that lot in PV Mall?
Yeah, well, that's what they're doing at PV Mall. They're turning it into like a Kierland type of, for people who don't know what Kierland's like, they've got retail on the bottom and residential on the top and restaurants. It's a whole inclusive little community. That's what they're going to do up there. And I think it's a great idea.
I think so too. I just hope it's not as expensive as it is in Kierland, where those little apartments cost what, $5,000 a month or something.
Well, and then you go down to the Chandler Mall down there, the Chandler Fashion Square, they call it. And it's just dead. You walk around that mall, there's nothing open. Nordstrom's is gone. Sears is gone. Macy's is in trouble. The Cheesecake Factory's barely hanging on. And these are all huge, big anchors in that mall. And you're in that mall and there's barely anybody walking around, which malls are very busy here in the summertime because it's 100 million degrees outside. So it's great to hang inside a mall. But the parking lot's empty. It looks like Christmas. Christmas Day, you go by a mall, everything's closed. There's nobody in the parking lot. Well, it still looks like Christmas Day.
Yeah, it's Christmas 365 days around.
So I don't see malls ever coming back, and there's better land use ahead, and the crazy ideas that come into your head is like, well, hey, those one-story malls that are out there, turn that into a large assisted living center. You could have medical doctors' offices in there. You could have parks that you can walk through. I thought my dad, when he was in a care center, he just wanted to get outside and garden. He'd stand there and look out the window and point because the hedges weren't trimmed. He's like, they need. I know, Dad, they're just not trimming the hedges. And
they're very particular at those.
Yeah. So you could have an environment where it's sectioned off, where people could walk around in parks, and the food is better, and medical care right there, and that's just my idea. I just don't know how to execute it.
That's the thing. We have so much. When work from home, I don't know if the work from home trend sticks as much as everybody thinks, but like you said, there's still so much land that could be better put to use. These malls that could turn into assisted living. You're seeing people live longer than ever, and the life expectancy just keeps going up and up and up and up. And I'll tell you what, when it comes back to inflation again, that kills retirees. And if Biden were to raise the capital gains tax on those people who need that portfolio income, I can't get over. I cannot get over how bad that would hurt retirees. And if Biden does anything that doesn't include what we were just talking about, which is making better use of the land, then I don't think he's serious about housing. I don't know how you can say you're serious.
The only
about
thing
housing.
I'm hearing coming out of the White House about housing is trying to incentivize and help first-time home buyers, and that will just make the problem worse.
How so? If you don't mind me asking.
Give you a $15,000 down payment grant to help you buy a product that's already in severe shortage. So let's say you're going to buy a car and you want to go out. Well, let's talk my little travel trailer. Okay. Yeah. There aren't any out there. You can't find it. Okay. So it's worth $7,000 in the open market. You want to buy a travel trailer. So I'm going to give you a grant, $3,000 grant to put down on a travel trailer. How long do you think mine's going to be worth $6,000? People are going to take those grants and they're going to go out and try to scoop up houses that don't even exist right now. You can't find anything for $250,000, $300,000. So if you're giving the first-time home buyer that incentive to go out and scoop out what little supply there is in the country, the prices are going to explode and you've accomplished nothing. And the other problem that we're having right now is like 30% of homes in the 300 to 400,000 range are being bought by institutional investors, squeezing out the first-time home buyer. So those are some of the real problems. It's not because people don't have the down payment money. It's the problem is they're getting outbid and they have to have appraisal waivers. So they got to reach into the bank account and get more money out. So that's a whole nother show. But
with the institutions and stuff like that, you're seeing a lot of money from other countries. China is buying up all the land in the big cities.
Yeah,
they got to get their money out of China. You have to get your money out of China. So what better place than United States real estate? I don't blame them. You put restrictions on that. I mean, if you talk about a cash cow, for the government, there's something, there's that would be something to look at. But again, the problem is we don't need incentives. We already have millions of people looking for the damn house. People will build them.
Yes.
Just build it.
Yeah.
Let them build.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting times to watch. Well, I'm looking forward to getting you back on next month. And I still got to come up and see your new office. Tell us again where it's at.
It's 11240 North Tatum Boulevard, right? Well, technically it's Phoenix. If I cross the street, we're in Paradise Valley. So I say Paradise Valley because I like, but really I just walk across the street and I'm in Paradise Valley. So yeah, we're right in Paradise Valley, and it's on Tatum. I love it. Yeah. It's like my new home.
Want to remind everybody to listen to your show. Your dad is on at 11 o'clock on Saturdays on KFYI, right?
That is correct.
And you are on at noon. So it's a great show. I try to, if I can't catch the show, you have replays on your websites, and they're well worth the listen. So I've got to scoot out of here. Got another appointment, but great to see you again, Sam. Let's do it again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on.
You bet. Talk to you soon.
Yep. Take care.